Eglin section of the Florida Trail. I had billed this as the Eglin Nokuse section of the Florida Trail. I don't have enough time to talk about both sections, but they are fairly contiguous. So it gives you an opportunity to have about 70 miles of uninterrupted wilderness hiking. So it's a really great section if you want a long stretch like that without any roads in between or very little bit of road walk in between. The other two sections that are comparable to that would be Ocala National Forest and the Swanee River section, where you can come up with 60, 70, 80 miles of continuous hiking. We're talking about the Florida Trail. Many of you who have attended my previous talks and Bill's previous talks know about the Florida Trail. It is, for those that don't, it is Florida is a national scenic trail, which is like the Appalachian Trail or Pacific Crest Trail. It is a trail that's recognized by Congress as a national scenic trail. It does run from the Everglades all the way up the peninsula and then out the Panhandle all the way to Pensacola. So it traverses virtually the entire state of Florida. And it's about, well, 1,100 miles plus. There's two sections in the middle. So the entire trail miles are something like 1,500 right now. You can take a westerly or an easterly route through the center of the state. So that adds up the miles. But if you do one all the way through, it's 1,100 or 1,200 miles. So it's a good long hike. We have, I don't know, probably 50, 60, 70 people a year who come through and do the whole thing from beginning to end in 1 year. And that's called a through hiker. Most of us civilians just go ahead and do little hikes here and there, day hikes, or we do several day hikes. I'm going to be talking about a 4-day hike through this Eglin section. And Eglin is in my top 3 favorite sections of the Florida Trail. It is just beautifully maintained. One thing I should mention also is the Florida Trail is maintained almost completely by volunteers. So there are different sections of the trail that have different groups, and they have volunteer groups that go out and maintain those sections, and they take responsibility for the section. I believe we have tonight the section leader for the Eglin section. His name is Keith Lefebvre, and I met him when I was out there. He helped me with a ride back to my car, and we got to know each other. And he was very interested in our presentation on his section. So he's the expert. So we'll let him weigh in, and maybe he'll type some things into the chat and correct me where I make some mistakes. But it is really wonderfully maintained. They say it's just gorgeous. It's a real joy to walk through this section. It's just a beautiful forested section. It's just pristine. It's been a preserved forest for over 100 years. Every few miles you have a creek. That's pretty unusual with Florida. I mean, any kind of trail, your water sources when you're going for several days are, critical because you can't carry all your water. So we tend to get water from natural sources and filter it along the way. And here it's just no sweat at all. I mean, just gorgeous, clear, spring-fed creeks every few miles. And because of those creeks, it kind of has this up and down elevation change, like really nowhere else on the Florida Trail that I've seen. And hold on, let me let these people in. Hold on, let me back up here, sorry. And so that's really cool. So even though, I mean, it's just this, it almost hikes itself. It's so gorgeous and it's so comfortable, and it's like this pine needle floor, and it's just a joy to walk through. But you get a workout. I mean, if you wanted to train for doing some of the easier sections of the Appalachian Trail in Georgia, this would be a good place to go because there really are elevation changes here like nowhere else in the Florida Trail. The amenities are wonderful. There's solid bridges in good condition. I mean, some of the fun of the Florida Trail is getting into these obstacles like, swamps that you have to wade through, or, areas where you have to kind of climb over different obstacles. But this is kind of beautiful because you really don't have any of that. You've got these just great bridges. I mean, any possible water obstacle that's there or any kind of land obstacle, there's a way to get through it very easily. And the bridges are really well made and really maintained well, which you appreciate when you do a lot of hiking on the Florida Trail. It's got signage. That's kind of unusual. There's a dearth of signage on the Florida Trail. Here is a lot of signage with mileage and what the next waypoint is, and that's really great. There's designated campsites with benches, tables, fire rings. Each one of them has a trail log. I don't see that too often around Florida Trail. So you can sign in or you can see other people have been coming through, and a big kiosk with information about what's going on the trail. As I mentioned, you can combine this with the Nokuse CRS section for about 74 miles of continuous wilderness trail. So it's really fantastic if you want to do a 5 or 6 day hike. But if you don't, there's many access points and trailheads. So that makes it great because even though it's really, pristine and wild out there, because it's, working Air Force Base, there are some good roads going through that and intersecting with the trail. So there's a lot of different trailheads and there's ample parking at a lot of those trailheads. So you can get on at a lot of places and do like a 6 mile, 8 mile hike for a day very easily. And of course you have some fun surprises. So we'll see some of those tonight. There's some really cute things along the way and kind of unusual things that you don't normally see. So here's where it is. So state of Florida, and it's way out towards, it's near Fort Walton Beach, out towards Pensacola, about 4 hours from Jacksonville in the Western Panhandle. Here's a closer look at it. So the section we're doing was the eastern section. So that's pretty much between Defuniak Springs and Crestview, are kind of the major towns that bracket that hike. And then there's these roads that you enter the trail from if you're doing that whole section. And so you've got 311, which runs from Defuniak Springs. You got 85 from Crestview. So we did the eastern section, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. But this whole section over here is also Eglin Air Force Base over towards Milton. A lot of this, though, is not, the Florida Trail can't go through it because of some big rivers in there that don't have a bridge. So the Florida Trail officially goes up through Crestview, does a little road walk, and then comes back down and then back into the forest, back in this western section. Here's another look at it. So we started over here, and then as you can see, it goes through pretty much on the border of the northern border of the Air Force Base. And we ended up here. I'll show you another look at that. But it keeps going, as you can see, and kind of dead ends here. But the real Florida Trail, in order to get around that dead end, goes up through here and goes on the road for a while. So a little bit about the history here. Let me just check and see if anyone's still waiting to get in. No, everybody's here. I have to back it up. Yeah, so this started out being visited by settlers in the 1850s with as really the timber industry being the driving force. This was all old growth longleaf pine, which was the dominant pine species for the entire southeast of the United States. it just, covered, these forests just covered the land that was, back from, from the coastal areas. It was a very valuable resource in colonial days, mainly because of shipbuilding. And so the industry is defined as naval stores. What that means is they did use the wood, but more importantly, they used the pitch, they used the tar, they used the sap that came out of the pines, and that's what they used to seal the ships. And so, Britain was a naval power. So way back when in the colonial days, it started out with this naval stores industry being a really important industry in the United States, or what was that time, the British colonies. And then it just grew. But what it was, how it proceeded was North Carolina was sort of the first area where the industry would, get in and work with the forests. And to them, it was just infinite, just these forests just went forever. There's this huge continent. So they just cut everything down, and used that, and they completely wiped out the longleaf pine forests in North Carolina. So then they moved to South Carolina and Georgia, and then finally, of course, down into Florida. So in the 1850s, Florida, North Florida, and even out in the Panhandle particularly, became a center for this naval stores industry. And they continued the same ways, and they would have a special way of getting that sap from the tree, where they would just cut a big section out of the trunk of the tree, and it would flow the sap right into a cup that they created by gouging out the tree trunk itself. And what that did is damage the tree, so it didn't last as long. And but that's the way they knew how to do it. And these guys were just, experts at tapping these trees and working the forest. And they just lived out in, it was like the middle of nowhere. It was just the wilderness out here. And they, that's the way they did it. But they didn't want what happened in North Carolina to happen to Florida. And by that time, there were some forestry science experts that had determined different ways to extract the sap. And so they had, new ways to do it. And then they also had regulations to protect the forests. And so in 1999, this area became the Choctawhatchee National Forest, which is the first national forest east of the Mississippi. And so, this area has been a national forest longer, than any other in our side of the continent. And what they did is they introduced this modern forestry science, which was improved methods of resin collection, which extended the life of the tree. And so maybe you've seen those out there. There's still some you can see old, they call them Herky cups. And so they were clay cups, and they were attached to the tree. And then there was a way to just make small slices into the tree to drain the resin. And they were also involved in reforestation. So when they cut the timber to use for the shipbuilding or home building, they would go in and plant seeds. And so, there was this forest ranger out there, and again, in the middle of nowhere. It took a long time to kind of bring these folks around that had been doing this logging forever, and thought they knew the best way to do it, and had always done it that way. And after a while, they came around, and they preserved that forest. And it was just very wild. I mean, there's no modern conveniences at all out there. And during the Depression, this became the first CCC camp in Florida. And so they built some ranger stations, and they built some other buildings down near what's now Niceville, Florida. And then in 1937, they established an airfield called Eglin Field. And so as they prepared for World War II, a lot of the testing of aircraft and of munitions was done down in this Eglin field. And in 1940, it was transferred from the Interior Department to the War Department. And then it became an official Air Force base. And this Air Force base also became committed to maintaining the forest through a fish and wildlife program that was established for the base in 1949 after the war. And so they've not only used the area for the Air Force, but they've also, taken a responsibility to preserve the forest and to keep it clean and, keep it healthy. And also it's a place where they promote recreation, fishing, hunting, boating, and for us, hiking. So it is an active Air Force base. So because of that, it's a little different than some of the other sections. All the visitors require a recreational permit to enter the grounds. Even if you're going in for half a day, you still need this permit. You can get it online at the link I have here, the isportsman.net, or you can just call the Air Force Base at that number there. And if you're going to camp, it requires a camping permit of $5 a day. If you're a through hiker, which they define as being someone hiking in from more than 50 miles from the Eglin boundary, then everything's free, but you still got to get the permit. So all these can be obtained from the Natural Resources Office that's down in Iceville. You can go there or you can call them, and they were able to set me up over the phone. So before you actually enter, they publish what they call a public access map every day. And they publish for what they estimate the activity is going to be for the next 2 days and the actual for the following day. And what this means is because it's a live Air Force base, they are doing testing, they're dropping and testing munitions and ordnance. And because of that, they want to know, they want you to know where they're going to be doing those military activities, and they close those sections. So if those sections that you're going to hike through are on that map, then you need to wait. You can't go through and you can't hike those areas that day. The other thing to do is, so you need to check that PAM, that public access map, and that's on that same website, Eglin iSportsman website. And then, or you can call the office and they can tell you where to go. And also you want to check the hunting dates, and those are also on the website, just like you would anywhere else on the Florida Trail. Just be aware of when it's hunting season and make decisions whether you're comfortable with that or not. By all means, always wear blaze orange when you're out there during the hunting season. So this is what the PAM looks like. And this orange line here through is an approximation of where the trail goes. So if you saw these red colorations in any of the sections through which the trail passes, then, you should wait. You shouldn't be hiking through. And here are all the section numbers that the Florida Trail actually passes through. So here's our hike that we did. We started over here at the Eglin portal on 331, and we took that to the Alaqua Trail. The Alaqua campsite. That's about a 10-mile hike in, and then we went the next day from Alaqua to the Red Deer campsite. That's about 15 miles, and then third day we went to Walton Pond, and that's about another 10 miles, and then last day we took about 7 miles. Got out to the Pearl Trailhead, which is on this major road leading to Crestview, which is 85. So here's some pictures from the hike, and you can see how beautiful it is. So these longleaf pine canopies It's just open forest on the sandhill habitat. It's just pristine. It's just gorgeous, and it's so Florida. It gave way before this campsite to some hardwood forests, and they were dominated with this Dahun holly, which is all in fruit at the time. We did this just before Thanksgiving. Here's one of the first campsites you come across, the Eglin Portal campsite. Again, you can see the nice signage. Here's one of the first creeks. This is Blount Creek. And like I mentioned, these creeks cross the trail every mile or two in Eglin. They have all kinds of varieties of different bridges to get across. This one's just a plank, and it's got you can't see it too well, but it's got a wire guy rope that you can hang on to, and it guides you through. Pretty soon you come to this thing called the wall. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's out of nowhere. There's just this wall of earth. I mean, it's like the whole thing just raised up. The whole floor of the forest just raised up. And so they provide you a little ladder to climb up, and you can see it from the top looking down. So that's a little fun stuff. Here's the Alaqua Creek Bridge. This is one of the bigger creeks and one of the bigger bridges. You can see how well made this bridge is. Again, just a joy to hike through here. Another kind of bridge over Okie Creek. And here's the Alaqua campsite where we stayed the first night. And you can see nice, beautiful information kiosk, signage, really nice clearing back there. Soon after that, the next morning, we hit another creek, Little Alaqua Creek, with yet another kind of a bridge. See how beautiful that is. It's hard to see. You can see the bottom on that. It's so clear. And so then we just huffed and puffed up the hill and got to the highest point on the Florida Trail, an elevation of 272 feet. Another little fun trip on this section. Here's a good picture showing the ascent up from Buck Creek, which is, again, pretty typical of these ups and downs. It's like, unlike most of the Florida Trail. So that's quite a steep climb there. We also arrived at the mile 1000 on the Florida Trail, and another steep climb out of Live Oak Creek. You just don't see this much in Florida. It's great. Here's a steep head ravine, as they're called. Look how steep that is. Really goes deep down in there, and some strange forest, some strange tree formations. Here's Hog Creek with a puncheon plank boardwalk leading to another innovative bridge there. And again, these are very, very good footing. They're all got this abrasive shingle, like roofing shingle on them. So yeah, they hold your feet really well. Here's the Red Deer campsite where we were the second night. Again, beautiful clearing, just a lot of space, information kiosk, sign in, good signage. Another creek, Gum Creek, just beautiful. And we kept going through, cycling between these hardwood forests and these beautiful open longleaf pine forests and sandhills. Big Fork Creek. A Big Fork Creek is a beautiful bridge, and I guess the people that built it took a little pride or maybe competition, because they left their names behind. You can see on this bridge has got this railing over here. And on one side of the railing, it says Bob's side, and the other side, it says Bill's side. So pride of ownership. And night 3, we stayed at Walton Pond, and I've been out here before, but on this trip, we came just after a little accident happened, and the dam, which holds this water into the pond, broke. And so they had just gone out there. Keith and his team had just gone out and rerouted the trail, so we were able to still get through and everything. But you can see that water's way down. There's hardly any water in that pond, which was kind of too bad. But a great campsite with a lot of room. And then they rerouted the trail and had some nice signage pointing us the way. So then on the next day, we had our last section. We went through this beautiful Silver Creek, which has another great bridge on it. On one side of the creek, there's beautiful carnivorous pitcher plants, which are seen quite a bit throughout Florida. They had a really good example, a whole clump of pitcher plants there before the bridge. And then we were having our lunch there beside Silver Creek, and we just saw these strange birds. How do you like that? You don't see that too much when you're hiking out in the wilderness. The Air Force is doing some exercises right overhead. This lasted for about 45 minutes or so. So we had a great free air show. The last creek we went past was Pearl Creek, and we're getting down into what they call sort of a tie-tie. There's trees, these little trees with that low, scrubby kind of growth are called tie-tie. Very thick, very difficult to cut through, but they've managed to give us a nice trailhead through here, a nice trail through here, and a nice plank bridge, and then the bridge over the creek. And that was our last creek before we came out on the road. And that's my presentation for tonight. So